Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangolangayate Girim Yatkripatamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinatarine Ajanulambita bhujo kanakavadato Sankirtanay kapitaro kamalaya taksho Vishwambaro dvijavaro yugadharma palo Vande jagat priyakaro karunavataro Shama sundara shikanda shekara Smerahasya murali manohara Radhikara sikamam kripanidhe Swapriya charana kinkarim kuru Tavaivasmi Na jivami taya vina Iti vigyaya radhitam Nayamam charanantike Hoya chena hoya bena prabhu jata das Savara charana vanda dante korigas Vansha kalpataru vyascha Kripa sindhu vyahevacha Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So before starting, I always start with offering respects to my guru, Om Vishnupada Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. I was fortunate to have met him when I was 13 years old, and I traveled with him for maybe 10, 15 years around the world. Got to be personally mentored by him, and spent 18 years in India, dedicated my life to him. So everything that I'm saying is what I learned from him, because anyone can have kind of a speculation and make shit up all the time, right? And we don't want to do that, right? We want to compound the wisdom that has been for 5,000 years, compounding, going deeper and deeper and deeper, and sticking with the essence. So every week we pick a subject to speak about, and since yesterday was a special day in the tradition to honor the Guru, I thought let's talk about the subject of Guru. Guru is a word that's been adopted into the Western vocabulary as like a teacher, and it's a controversial idea because some people, they take their Guru, they put them on the altar, they treat him like God. They're like, this person is the Messiah coming from, and they treat him like God, put him up on a big huge pedestal. And a lot of gurus have been like, oh, that's kind of cool, and they've taken that as their thing, fake gurus, to be put on a big pedestal and done all kinds of bad things. That's happened more times than we probably want to admit, right, in history. And a lot of people don't like the idea of how can you take a human being and elevate them to such a level. But at the same time, the idea of guru, the concept of guru is, in one sense, like biologically inbuilt into us. And what I mean by that is, the fact that we use the word in English. If someone's does marketing, they're a marketing guru. If someone does a teacher, there's this guru, and like you do the whole social media, there's all these influencers. It's all people imparting knowledge and wisdom. If you go to school, if you go to university, you've got your teachers there that are the authorities on a subject, and it's really hard to learn anything if you do not respect the idea that someone knows more about that thing and can impart that knowledge to us. There's actually some, talking about marketing, there's one book by Robert Cialdini. It's called, what's the book called? Influence. It's called Influence. And it says there's 6 biological triggers in the brain that enables you to influence, and it's what marketers do to influence people's minds. So one of them is reciprocity. You give something, then people want to give something in return. That's not Vedic. This is like a lot of science. He's really, really famous, like super famous guy. It's a famous book. But one of the principles is authority. That when there's an authority, our brain turns off and we just accept authority naturally. It's like instinct biologically. So marketers will just like take a position of authority in like a commanding place, and then people's brains turn off, not really judging what goes on and happens. So my point with that is that the idea of having an authority or having a teacher or having a mentor is everywhere. It's all the time. But turning your brain off, like I said in the beginning, is probably not a good idea, right? We want to keep our brain. So what is the function of guru? What is it in its purest kind of highest state? How is it when it's perverted? And in realistic life that we live now in the 21st century that we live now, what is the purpose and function of guru? Is that interesting? Any questions about that, or should we move forward with those questions? Yeah? Good idea? Yeah, okay. So I like to start from, in a sense, the beginning, and then see how it's evolved from there. So we're going to go right down into where the Vedas talk about guru. The word guru is a Sanskrit word from the Vedas. And what do they say that guru is? And then we'll translate that and bring that forth, right? They say, Jiva Shakshad Nahi Tate Guru Cheta Rupe, Shiksha Guru Hoya Mahanta Surupe. Quoting the old stuff, right? And that says that guru is something that exists inside of the heart. There's something called the Cheta Guru. Some people can call this the intuition. In previous classes, we spoke about the different understandings of God or the different understandings of the divine. And one of those understandings is that which exists inside of everything, outside of everything, which is all pervasive being, that if we were to connect in like a yogic state that we were talking about before, go into meditation deeply, we can have a relationship with that cosmic consciousness which exists everywhere. Give a whole class on that, we can go into deep. But one of the ideas of that is that consciousness is conscious and therefore has a desire and is therefore guiding all of things to happen in reality. One quote says that not a blade of grass moves without the will of the divine. Everything is happening by a divine power, by definition. That's what God is, if you believe or not, right? That's what God's causing the sun to rise, the sun to set, causing everything to happen, and everything's in that control. So the original idea of guru is to be able to tune into God inside of the heart, if you would say, right? Spirit, and say, what should I do? How do I act? What is your desire? Our disease in this world that binds us, that causes all of our suffering, that throws us off track, is we want to say, screw you to that, and we want to say, I don't care what divine existence wants. It's all about what I want. How do I satisfy my desire? How do I have control about living life my way, doing it on my terms, to please me, so that now it's not the divine as the center of the universe, I'm the center of the universe, and everything is supposed to revolve around me. And this is what I call God syndrome in my book, right? This is, we want to be God, we want to be that enjoyer. And when trying to do that, sometimes we have some happiness, and sometimes we get slapped in the face. Sometimes we suffer, and Etato Brahma Jigyasa. There's the Vedanta Sutra, which is the essence of all the Vedic wisdom, 551 line phrases that encapsulates everything. And the first one is Etato Brahma Jigyasa, which says, and therefore one inquires about the truth. What does this mean, right? Therefore means after we've tried to enjoy in the world and then get punched in the face. After we try to get happiness and had our heart broken. After we've tried again and again for many, many, many lifetimes, the living entity says, I wonder if there's something else. I wonder if there's something more to life. I wonder if there's something beyond just satisfying my desires, satisfying my mind, satisfying my biological instincts. And then the soul begins to inquire, what is the truth? What is God? What is reality? Is there a God? Why am I here? Who am I? Why am I here? What's the purpose? Why am I suffering? Once someone starts inquiring that, then spiritual life starts, right? There's that inquiry that starts. Before that inquiry, then we're just living, then we're like the same as an insect or the same as a tiger or a dog, just following our instincts, reacting, eating, sleeping, making babies, defending our stuff, saving money, trying to, but then the Fed keeps on printing money and diluting our, right? There's always someone trying to get us with taxes and fees or whatever, right? And so that's just animal life. But human life is when we start inquiring, okay, what is the absolute, right? What is the divine? And with that, is the idea that there is an absolute, there is a divine, there is something that is a power that's greater than us. And the original guru is that power and is, in a sense, a surrender or a subjugation of my own selfish desires to selflessly love and follow the guidance of that supreme being. Does that make sense? Encapsulation, again, when we are conditioned in this world, we want to be God, it's all just about what I want. I don't care about anyone else. Everything is just there to satisfy my end. Once we find that that doesn't work very well, then we say, is there something else? Maybe I'm not God, maybe there's something else, and we start inquiring on that, and that's when our spiritual life starts. That's the beginning of spiritual life. And when we advance in spiritual life, this guru inside of the heart is something so beautiful. It's something so powerful. You can have this intuition and know exactly what to say, what to do, how to do anything. All knowledge can, in a sense, be downloaded to you. In the beginning, we were talking about Veda, right? This, I said, a body of books that teaches a lot of stuff. But Veda literally means knowledge. It means truth. And through simple realization, without intellectual study, we can know all of the truth. It's about realized knowledge. How do I explain this? Theory means nothing. Theory, you get hit on the head, you have amnesia, you don't sleep right, your brain cells, you get Alzheimer's, it's all gone, right? Spiritual life and real knowledge is about having a imbibed wisdom in our being. And when we imbibe that wisdom is one truth, because by definition of what the truth is, it's complete and it's eternal, and that's what reality is. So spiritual life, in a sense, is realizing that truth within ourselves, is knowing that. That's why you can have many different religions, many different gurus or messiahs in different cultures, in different millenniums, and they speak about spiritual life, and they have very different languages, different styles, but often all explaining the exact same reality, the exact same truth from a different perspective, because it's something that's realized inside of the heart. So we talk about Guru Tattva, or the philosophy of Guru. That's highest Guru, is Guru inside of the heart, and we practice our spiritual life like that in everything. However, when we're not pure, which we probably are not, right? When we still identify with this body as ourselves, and we still identify with the mind, and we still have our selfish desires that drive us to life, normal is the definition of being here, then sometimes our ears get a little clogged, and we can't hear that guru inside of the heart. We're unable to hear that. So there's this intuition that's telling us what to do, but we're not listening to that intuition. We're not able to hear that. Then what do? How do you advance spiritually in that? That's when the idea of guru that we speak about in general comes into being. It's like, well, if we find someone else who can listen to that guru inside of the heart, and then they translate it to our language, to English or German or whatever our language is, and then they can tell us, then that's our way of how we can access that eternal wisdom, or we can access that eternal knowledge. They become like a mailman, in a sense, a delivery representative of that knowledge, right? Now, and that's the idea of now when there's a person that's a guru, that's a teacher, that had certain realizations inside of their heart, they've got this wisdom, and they speak it. Half of the Vedic literature was written, it says tens of thousands of years, historically it's 5,000 years ago, but really it's a little longer than 5,000 years ago. But half of the Vedic wisdom is actually different gurus going deep into meditation and writing their realization. There's a division of the Vedas. One is called Shruti, which is like the original texts, and then there's the interpretations of those texts based on people's individual spiritual growth, that is called Smriti. And in the Vedic culture, we respect both Shruti and Smriti with equal respect. In some ways, we respect Smriti, or the realized knowledge coming from a guru, more, because that's translated and made more relevant for where we are. That's the function. So yesterday, which was the special Guru Day, the reason why we're having this class, was called Vyas Purnima, or the original author of the Vedas. His name was Vyasdev. It was his appearance, it was his birthday, right? And it was in celebration of him. And he's like the original guru. But if you go into his name, Vyas means to expand. So when we look at the Vedic wisdom or knowledge, there's a certain beauty, there's a certain sweetness. And the specific speedness that I'm referring to right now is the expanding and the contraction of wisdom. So on one level, you've heard the word Om, maybe people all meditate, right? This is the essence of all Vedic wisdom, right? If you're going to chant one mantra, you sit there and you chant Om, and then everything comes and realizes in your heart. You no need to do any of the other songs, any of the other anything. We just everything is encapsulated in this word. Hello.
Hello.
Will you be joining us?
Yes.
Okay, please come have a seat. You want to move over a minute? Okay. What's your name?
Karin.
Karin. Okay. Welcome. And so what do you expect from the class? What's your ideas?
Because it's like was full moon 2 days ago, something. I think it's like relationship with the moon. I don't know what are you talking about. But I think here was a full moon ceremony or something like that.
Okay. There's something about a full moon ceremony. We're not doing that. We're doing monk club, which I lived in India for 18 years since I was a child in the monastery in the temple there. So every week on Friday at 4 o'clock, if you live here, you're welcome to come. Right? We do a class on the same wisdom that I learned from my teachers and from an entire lifetime of entire 18 years there, right? In India, we do a class to go deeper into that wisdom and to learn and experience that. And then we also do some kirtan music and a community. So that's what we're doing.
Nice.
Okay? And if you have any questions, we like questions, right? Questions are good. And actually, in relation to the full moon, since we're talking about that, yesterday was Vyas Purnima, or Guru Purnima. It was the original guru of all of yoga, of all of Eastern wisdom, of all of Hindu wisdom, of all of meditation. It was his birthday yesterday. And in celebration of him as the original guru, then we respect all the gurus in the lineage. So we're talking, what does that mean? Why do we need a guru? Or do we need a guru? What's its essential function? So that's what we're having, the class today. So far, just to catch us up, is we're going to do a super fast version because we spoke some stuff before, right? Is we're not this body. This body is every 7 years, every cell of the body changes. It's always transforming. When you were a baby and how we look now, completely different, everything different. The mind also always changing. But us as a spirit, as a soul, transcendental consciousness that exists beyond the body and mind, what's the purpose of that thing? And we say, is to grow spiritually. To grow spiritually. Then what does that mean, to grow spiritually? Well, then what is not spirituality versus spirituality? Not spirituality is when you're selfish. Is when you say, it's all for me, it's all for my pleasure, my body, my mind. It's I only care about myself. Even though we don't know who we are, right? We're just about this body and mind, so that's why it's called illusion or delusion, Maya. Like we're, in one sense, you can say completely insane, right? Because it's not, it's true, but how do you say, lower level truth, right? Of the body and being selfish. Spiritual life is knowing our true identity and being selfless in loving, acknowledging a higher spirit, a higher power, right? So the idea of guru is simply there to be able to have us advance and do that more, right? Simply to be able to have us advance and grow in our spiritual life. That's the purpose of guru. And we say that by definition, God, or the Supreme Being, exists everywhere, inside of everything, outside of everything, and is the cause of everything and the most powerful force in existence. Because if that was not the case, it would not be God. Right? It would be something. It would be a tree. It would be something else, right? It wouldn't be God. By definition, that's what God is. So the original guru is God inside of our heart, inside of everything. And the ancient yogis, the people who advance spiritual life, are always looking intuitively about what's meant to happen in nature and following that will selflessly as opposed to following our own will. Make sense so far? We're good? A recap. This stuff there's a lot of depth, we can always go. But sometimes our ears have earwigs in them. Sometimes we have a lot of wax. We haven't done the candles or whatever. If they work, I don't know if it's a scam. But point being is that because of our conditioned mind in this world and the being bewildered by our lust, our anger, our greed, our lower natures and quality, we're not always able to hear and intuit this higher wisdom. That's the intuition. Maybe we've experienced sometimes there's a voice inside telling you to do something, you don't listen to it, and you get screwed. You're like, I should have listened to that. You don't know, or this is. So it can be hard. So the real concept of a guru or a teacher is we find someone who is more advanced than us in their spiritual growth and is maybe a little bit better at being able to hear that wisdom. Is a little bit better at being able to hear that wisdom, and then they teach us what they're hearing. And the Vedas, yoga, right? Yoga comes from a body of wisdom, which is Vedas, many libraries big of these ancient texts. Half of them were written by Vyasadeva, whose birthday was yesterday. And the other half were the gurus throughout history. They're writing their own realization in the form of books, and we like those more than the original Vedas because they're made more relevant and more practical to us. And that brings us caught up to where we were in the class about the beauty of the nature of knowledge. I mean, if Veda is just true knowledge, one of the beauties is its expanding and its contraction, its ever-changingness, which is kind of weird because I just said that it's eternal and it's fixed, right? And you turn into that eternal reality. But this knowledge we're speaking about is transcendental, right? It's eternal. It's real reality. And by nature, by definition, you can say that this knowledge is God. Does that make sense, or is that a little too much? The knowledge that I'm speaking about is a spiritual wisdom that is not of this world. And if it's not of this world, it's of a spiritual dimension. And that spiritual dimension, actually including the material dimension, we could say is the potency or the energy coming from God, right? It's something which is transcendent. So if we're going to tune into that Veda, if we're going to tune into that guru inside of the heart, if we're going to connect with real wisdom, that in of itself is connecting with God. Does that make sense? That's like a relationship with God. That's why we're talking about different spiritual practices. One spiritual practice is what we're doing right now, is where we're talking about true wisdom, we're talking about knowledge, and that in and of itself is a spiritual process because that's now vibrating on a soul level, not on a body level. So then it comes to, okay, well then how do we define God? How do we understand God? What is it? And I gave a whole class on that recently, and I'm not going to do that right now. That's a big discussion. But one thing that I would like to bring is a lot of people's ideas of God is super boring. It's super boring. It's super simplistic. It's like there's an old guy. Like, why would God be old, first of all, right? Right? But it's an old guy that lives in the sky and is somehow obsessed about whether we sinned or not, right? Or whether we did something good or bad. And it's like our lives are more interesting than his life, and he's just like watching what's going on with us, right? It's like, okay, it's pretty cool, but if you were the source of all of existence and the cause of all of creation, the most powerful thing in existence, would there be maybe something else going on, right? Yeah. Would it be doing something else? Like, I mean, it's like if I was a billionaire, it would be a little different, really, like, and this is like, so this idea is also true. God by nature knows everything and exists everywhere all the time. So it's everything we're doing is also witnessed and understood and seen by God. Otherwise, it would not be God if he did not know everything and wasn't there. That's true, but there's more dimension to God, right? So then there's this other idea of God as just like this impersonal white light, like this Brahman thing. I remember I was in Los Angeles and I had a friend she's a really expert dancer, an Eastern dancer, and they were in one of the big fancy theaters, amphitheaters there. They were doing a dance performance presentation. It was like on TV. It was like a Hollywood production. It was pretty cool, right? And so she gave us tickets to come in. And the dance was a traditional dance, a traditional Indian dance. And it was the story of someone's journey in spiritual life, right? So the beginning part of the journey was talking about like the person was trying to meditate, and then there was like a pretty girl dancing, right? And then there was like this, like being pulled by the different shiny things of this world, right? And then they were showing, okay, then there's enlightenment, and they were just showing him sitting there like like that, the reason why I'm telling this story is when I was watching it, I thought it was really interesting because they're like artistically communicating. They're artistically communicating this world and supposedly the transcendental world, but when you're watching it, this world looks way better. They had like all this music and everyone was dancing in circles and jumping up. It was great. And then like enlightenment was just like sitting there and doing nothing. And it was like no exciting, really boring, right? And I was like, well, if I didn't have a preconceived idea and I was watching this, I'd be like, well, I'll pick that one. I'm not going to pick the enlightenment stuff because it's like, well, what are you doing, right? There's nothing going on. And I think a lot of the reasons for this is a type of anthropomorphization. Long word, but basically it's like when some people, like, they say, okay, can God be a human, right? Some religions will say God is a human, and they'll say, well, that's because you're human, you're imposing your material concepts and ideas onto God, right? By saying, oh, I'm 2 hands and 2 legs, God also 2 hands and 2 legs, right? As a human being. But I say that this idea is also a type of my own word, reverse anthropomorphization. We say, in this world, if there's color, if there's a nice Tulum beach, if there's variety, if there's different foods and colors and smells and tastes and dances, everything, and this stuff is not real, or it ultimately leads to suffering in a lot of ways, then God or the spiritual enlightenment must be not that. It's going to be nothing, right? And that's where you get into that Brahman idea, or that idea of like the enlightenment, the nirvana, the white light, the nothingness, where you just go into non-existence, right? And I get why, and we gave a whole class on different levels of understanding, and that's one of the levels of understanding of the divine. So there's truth to that, right? But it's boring, right? But it's boring. So the point that I'm making is that maybe the supreme being or supreme reality is interesting. And maybe it's fun. Maybe there's beauty. Maybe there's sweetness. Maybe the love that we can have in this world is minute and almost nothing compared to transcendental eternal love. Maybe the love we feel in this world is a small reflection, a fragmented reflection of the infinite love that can exist with the divine. And the Vedic, yogic, Hindu, I guess you can say, philosophy likes to see things that way. Not everyone, but our lineage, what I got from my guru, we like to see it that way. And the reason why I'm bringing that up in the context of knowledge is that this knowledge about absolute reality, the knowledge that we realize and we can intuit inside the heart, the guru inside of that heart, that knowledge is not just like a bland om, but there's variety and beauty and sweetness in that knowledge. It's an ever-changing ocean of bliss, is often understood. It's like the ocean is one thing, but then it's different waves and different colors and different things bringing different variety to that. So, is this getting too complicated, or you guys on the same page with this, right? So the Eastern idea of knowledge is that it's also changing. So what a guru will come is Vyasadev, the original guru, his name, literally like the Sanskrit translation of his name, means to expand. So originally there's Om, all of wisdom inside Om, and he's like, well, if I just go and say Om to people, they don't get it, right? They don't understand. So he writes the different Vedic scriptures, all these books basically explaining the Omkara, Akshar, the Om, explaining these big, huge variety of things. Then it gets so big and so expansive, it's like, I don't understand it. Now it's overwhelming. Now it's just too much coming on. Then he condenses down, so it's like small and it expands through what the guru is expanding. Then he condenses it down into its essential points. And that's what I told previously was Vedanta Sutra, which is the 550 like one-line phrases that encapsulates all the Vedic wisdom, like Atato Brahma Jigyasa. We spoke about one of them in the beginning, and therefore we inquire about the truth. But then if you just say, and therefore one inquires about the truth, it's like, right? That doesn't make any sense. So then that knowledge gets expanded again. And in a sense, I took that condensed form of knowledge, and in this class, I'm explaining it and making it practical, accessible, communicating it in a language you understand. So now we're expanding it again. And then it can get too much, and we say, okay, well, actually, or we're just basically saying is this: expanding and contracting, expanding and contracting. That's the nature of wisdom. So what the tradition has is that a guru comes and takes the essential Vedic wisdom, and then according to the specific time, place, and circumstance, according to the relationship with the disciple, they expand that wisdom and explain it and spoon feed it in a way that they can understand. And then when it gets too much, then simplify, just do this. Right? You don't get overcome, just do this. This is what you do. And that guru, in a sense, is like a mentor, is like a guide in our spiritual life, always expanding and contracting and tuning into eternal wisdom and being able to guide us from that place. This is something which is very helpful for spiritual life because we can't always hear the guru inside of the heart. We can't, right? That's why we need a guru. The beauty, maybe it's getting a little deep, right? What is the wisdom that we're talking about? What is it? Some say God is love, love is God. It's a transformation of love. It's relationship. It's relationship. So relationship takes a lover and a beloved by nature, by definition, right? Lover, beloved, and then the nature of that love. So they say true spiritual wisdom is knowing who am I, who is it that I love, God or the Supreme, and what's the nature of that relationship. And spiritual life is cultivating and creating that loving relationship, that loving dynamic. But, I mean, you can experience in your own life how many relationships you have with people and how many of them are the same. They're all different, right? Everyone you know, everyone you see. Hello. You're going to be joining us?
Yes.
Okay, come, welcome.
Office for experience. Thank you.
So to encapsulate what, no, I'm not going to give the whole class again, but but we're talking about Guru and about, because yesterday was Guru Purnima, or the original.
The day before yesterday.
Day before yesterday.
Well,
Yeah. It was the day of the original author of the Vedas, Vyasdev. So we're speaking about that philosophy. We've talked a lot. It's been 32 minutes according to the camera. So where we are right now is, well, what is the wisdom that Guru imparts? And that wisdom is the wisdom of relationship, is the wisdom of love, is the wisdom of connection, of relationship. Then we need to explore, well, what is the nature of relationship? What is the nature of that? And we can say that it's not just love, as like all love is not the same. Every person you meet, you have a different relationship with. Everyone you know, it's like a different relationship. Sometimes we like to watch romance movies or just couples, whatever, because the relationship that each couple has is also unique. It also has a different flavor, has a different dimension to it, right? And in one sense, we can say even just the material relationships we have in this world are unlimited. Every parent has a different relationship with their child. There's categories of parental relationship, romantic relationship, friendship, but there's so much dimension to it, right? And that's just the material expression of that. So if we're talking about relationship with God or eternal relationship, then that relationships are going to be unlimited. Those relationships is going to have so much variety and depth and dimension and diversity to that relationship. Otherwise, how can you call it spiritual? How can you call it God? So what they say is that each Atma, or each soul, each individual, each one of us is completely unique. And we have a completely unique personal relationship with God or the divine. Our relationship, no one has the same exact relationship. We have our own special relationship. And that's why Nitya Siddha Krishna Prem Sadhya Kabunai Shravanadi Sudha Chitta Koryodai. It's not that the Guru teaches you that this is what your relationship is, this is how you love. Yes, you learn the general categories, just like a romantic relationship or a friendship has general kind of rules and principles to it. But it's not that the Guru is teaching us the same old. It's more that we have an inherent relationship in our heart, and that relationship, spiritual life, is discovering that relationship and cultivating and sprouting that relationship. Like a seed, like we're all an individual type of seed, and spiritual life is growing that, but we have our own leaves and branches and trees and fruits of a complete difference. Is this making sense, or is it? It's like individuality, and that's what the beauty is. Otherwise, there would be no point in living if we didn't have a unique existence. If there was no way of differentiating me from another existence, why exist? Right? The speciality is what makes it beautiful and what makes it powerful. And then if God could get the same love from any old soul, why does he need love? If it's he, that's another discussion, right? But why does the Supreme Being need our love? Only if it's special, only if it's unique, only if it's beautiful. So then spiritual life is the Guru teaching us how to uncover our own natural tendency to love, our own proclivity, the love that exists inside of our hearts. And that's beautiful, right? So that's why the Eastern philosophy is not so much about you just have the book and read the book and that's the same for everyone. That's not the point, because everyone's going to have a different application. It's going to be a different interpretation, different time, place, circumstance, different stage in our spiritual growth, different relationship. And that's why inherent in the Vedic approach to understanding reality, we have personal mentorship or individualized guidance in our spiritual growth. And that's what a guru is, someone who knows us personally and helps us individually in our spiritual growth. But I'm going to finish here and then we're going to open up to questions and answers because we've gone very deep so far. But is that it? Is it just a mentor to find what's inside of our heart? Or is there something more? I say, for maybe you heard in the beginning, I was remembering my guru. My guru means so much more to me than just someone helping me, clear my ears out of something that I could find by myself. There's got to be something more to it. From experience, I'm saying. Philosophically, we'll get into it, right? But there's got to be something more. And that goes back down to the uniqueness of relationship. How every relationship is unique. Then when we hear knowledge coming from someone of a particular relationship, it colors that knowledge. That wisdom gets their relationship imbued into that wisdom. So if someone's saying, love God, right? That can be written in a book. But if someone says, love God like this, and they have a specific love of God in their heart, and they teach that, then that gets colored with their style, with their mood, with the specific shade of their soul. That those words now have the shade of their soul imprinted onto that wisdom. Now when they say it to us, there's a extra sweetness. It's like a embellishing it, making it even sweeter. The metaphor described in the Vedas, Sukha Mukhat Amrita Drava Samyutam, is what it says in Sanskrit. In maybe here also, but in India they have a lot of mango trees. And then how do you know which is the best mango to eat, right? If you have a tree, which is the sweetest one? There's one thing they call as Gashar Paka in Bengal, which means if it's ripened on the tree, then it's better than if it's taken off green and then ripened separately, which ripened on the tree, it's like extra sweet. And then, but what they say in the Indian culture is that if a parrot comes and picks the right mango from the tree, they know which one's the best. So out of all the mangoes on the tree, the parrot picks like the sweetest mango. And then there's, on top of that, with their beak, when they bite a mango, they have there's like a chemical interaction that makes that mango even sweeter than it was originally. So in India, if you can get a mango that's half eaten by a parrot in the tree, that's going to be your best mango like ever, because it's got the sweetness that was given by the bird and picked the best. So the Vedic wisdom is considered in the same way. The wisdom is pure and complete. Om, like we said in the beginning, that's what it is. Everything is just an Om. But with every guru, this coloring of their soul is like the parrot that's picking a certain part of that wisdom, adding their own sweetness to that wisdom, and making it even more beautiful, more relatable, more accessible, and more deep. So what we have is something called a Guru Parampara, or a lineage, where there's a guru, takes the wisdom, gives to the disciple. The disciple takes it, realizes it, gives to their disciple, gives to their someone. For thousands of years we have the name of each of the guru. There's one song sometimes we sing where we just go the name of all the gurus going there. And each guru will write some of their own books, will teach their own things, and have their own dimension given to the philosophy and the wisdom, and later down the line it just becomes sweeter and sweeter and sweeter and imbibed with relationship. So one aspect, I'm almost finished and then we go to questions, right? One aspect of the idea of guru is guru, like we said, helps us hear what we can't hear. More important than that, guru is guiding us specifically about what we need in our spiritual life at that time. More important than that, the guru is having his own relationship with her own relationship with God, and we are in a sense observing that relationship and seeing that sweetness and entering into that kind of love dynamic as if you're watching a romantic movie or something like that, getting something. And each guru is giving their own sweetness into the knowledge, into the wisdom of our spiritual growth. This is good, but there's more. Right? But there's more. If knowledge is eternal, and if the process of learning that knowledge always involves a guru, because otherwise it wouldn't be so sweet, then that relationship with guru must also be eternal. That relationship can't be material, because then you're missing it, right? You're missing the essence. So it's also understood that there's something called Akhanda Guru Tattva, or that same guru that's inside of the heart, that's always with us, that's always guiding from within. That relationship is eternal. And that relationship, when we give up this body, when we give up the mind, we still relate with God in the context of that relationship. And that's beautiful. And what that means practically in this world, if you have a person that's representing as guru, they kind of like, how do we explain this in a material context? It's kind of like they become the archetype or the representation of that guru inside of your heart, and they fulfill that role. They can tune into the guru inside of your heart and take that place to guide you, in a sense, if it's making anything. So really, in the Vedic wisdom, without guru, nasiddhim nasadgatim, it says in Shastra, that you can study all day, you can study all night, you can practice spiritual life all by yourself, but unless you have that loving mentorship and relationship with guru, then there's always going to be a lacking in your spiritual growth. There's something which is very necessary. However, there's been a lot of abuse, right? With gurus, there's been a lot of people that say, I'm the intermediary between you and God. You can't know God unless I'm talking, which is another way of translating what I say. And they say, give everything to me. Because another way of understanding a guru is, like we said, like a postman. If spiritual life is giving our heart to God, right, is loving, then how do we practically practice giving that love? Especially if it's someone you haven't seen, you haven't smelt, you haven't seen, like some etherical idea of God. Then another function of guru, if they're selfless and qualified, is you give that love to guru, and guru doesn't take it for himself, and guru gives to his guru, gives to his guru, gives to his guru, all the way up to God. Like if you take the flower, I'm going to offer this out of love, you give to your guru. Guru takes, oh thank you, gives to his guru, gives to his guru, gives to your, and then each one of them are giving their sweetness and their love and their beauty to that flower before it reaches. So it's beautiful in the pure sense, but then it's also ripe for just worship me and love me like God. Give me all your money, give me all your wealth, give me all your everything, and take it for the self. And in India, in every corner there's a guru, right? Every corner, right? 18 years there, every corner there's a guru. There's always someone trying to, how do you say, be a guru? They say guru mile lak lak shishya na mile ek. It's almost sometimes where you get thousands of gurus and it's hard to even find one disciple, right? Everyone's just like fighting over who's going to be my disciple and who's going to be my follower. And I mean, all I can really say to this is that's the misfortune of the material world, of material conditioning, right? It's the misfortune. However, what I'm going to say is controversial, but not all is lost. Because if real guru is that eternal guru inside of the heart, and someone has taken the role, maybe they have some spiritual growth, and they can guide you a little bit, and some of it's their own mental shit that they're mixing into the mix. The actual love that you gave, real guru, inside of the heart, God is saying, oh, I can see that sincerity that you had when you're trying, and still goes and is able to accept. It's like, it's almost like if you have different classes and you get it, like if you're studying like PhD astrophysics, then the mentors that you have to really know their stuff about astrophysics or whatever. But when you're in kindergarten, you can have a high school dropout that's your kindergarten teacher, and it's enough for you in that stage in life, right? So, hello. It's an interesting story with her. When my guru was on the planet, I used to travel around with him, and then he sent me teaching separately. And some of the people from Peru came to my guru and said, could you send one of your teachers to teach in Peru? He said, oh, my disciples are already arranging. I didn't hear that. I didn't know. I never told him or anything like that. But guru by definition is aware of it. They're already arranging. And I was actually arranging with some other people to go and do a tour in Peru. And it was like, how did he know about it when we hadn't even talked? And he like sent me without sending me to Peru. And then I went to I was doing a small program like this in Arequipa, which is like a small village in Peru. And she was like 10 years old at the time, or 11 years old at the time, and there was like 3 people in the class. It was really small, in someone's house, and she was there in the class, and I was a kid that was there. And then years later here in Tulum, I saw her, and we made that connection of that Peru, that Peru thing. Like, wow, it's a really small world. So yeah, that was interesting. It's always remember that when I was like a kid, a 10-year-old you saw in a class in a little village in Peru, you know.
Yeah.
Right?
That is something very special.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is there are plenty of non-pure gurus. There are plenty. And the conventional wisdom, which is true, is you want to get a pure guru. You don't want an impure guru, right? There's Shiva, he's instructing to his wife Parvati yogic wisdom, and he says, Guru Bhava Shanti Shishya Vitta Paharaka, Durlabha Sadguru Deva Shishta Shanta Paharaka. Says you'll get thousands of gurus that just want to take your money, right? Take your wealth, take your whatever value you give to them. But it's very hard to find a real guru that can really guide you spiritually. They say that both the guru and the disciple goes to hell if it's an unqualified guru. Metaphorically, in other words, you're both screwed, right? So for the bad karma of taking that position when it's not, when it's just selfish, and then you follow a selfish narcissist, right? Then you're not going to advance very much. It's not going to work very well, and that's true. However, and I've taught that all around the world for decades, but I actually think they say Shakshad Hriteda Samasta Sastre Viktasakava Gateva Sastra Yasaprasada Bhagavat Prasada says that it's by the mercy of God that you get a guru, and it's by the mercy of guru that you get God. That's the way that it works. And if you're not ready for the highest level guru, no matter what you do, you're not going to get the highest level guru. So you can't do it. The kindergarten student that says, I want the astrophysicist PhD from Harvard to teach me, so that's nice, but the kindergarten teacher will help you just fine, right? Yeah. For now, right? And I've observed in different places, people that have a guru, sincere, practice some time, then they get disillusioned. They see, oh, he actually was banging his disciples, right? Or some other problem, and they leave, and then they get a more advanced guru. And you can see, and the spiritual, if they hadn't been under the mentorship of that guy, they probably wouldn't have been able to advance to the next level. And so, yes, having your heart closed and only wanting to find pure guru is a very good thing. But also having your heart open to actually grow spiritually. There's my guru's guru wrote down like 14 powerful statements before they left. And one of the statements says, for the sincere soul, there's never, how do you say, they're always safe in their spiritual life. If we think of the purpose of all of existence, the purpose of the sun and the moon and the trees and all of reality is for our spiritual evolution, everything is set up for our spiritual growth. So as soon as we're sincere in trying to grow spiritually, God goes, oh my gosh, I've been waiting for this, thank God, and moves the whole universe to give us exactly what we need in our spiritual growth. At that time, a different guru, one of my guru also, but a different one, I can tell you their names if you want, but Direkshak Sridhar, she has another thing where he says the environment is always favorable. The situation that you're in is always the perfect situation for spiritual life. A lot of people, I need to do this, I need to go there, I need to go there. No, you're always in the right situation for spiritual life. And according to the level of your sincerity, that guidance and that real guru is there. But just as finding a pure guru is hard, finding pure disciple is equally as hard. All of that, there's something called kapata, which is duplicity, which is supposed to be like the worst thing for a spiritual life. Is showing one thing up front, but actually wanting something else. Well, it would be behind. So we say, oh, I want to do spiritual life for this, but really we just want to get rid of suffering. That's still a selfish desire. It's not pure, sincere desire. So then we get a bit of so we're cheating, saying we're doing spiritual life, but it's actually not fully sincere. So we get a cheating guru also. The other one's to guide in spiritual life and also give something not sincere. So it says, oh, I want to have a proper guru, but it has to be like in a very beautiful place, and it's like that, or it has to be Indian with a beard and wobble his head. That's not sincerity. We have our own material conditioning, and we get a guru accordingly. So even though there's a lot of cheating, a lot of lying, a lot of that, I actually think, not based on just my thoughts, but on the wisdom and observation, that everyone's getting exactly what they need, exactly what they want, exactly what they deserve, and it's all good. We can look at it with the eyes of envy. A lot of people envious, right? We can look at it the eyes of fear and that, or we can look at it as everything's happening perfectly according to like we said in the beginning, not a blade of grass moves without the will of the divine, right? Everything happening completely perfect. And the only concern we need to have is our desire, because that's the only power we have. We gave a few classes ago, class about desire is what makes us is our desire. Last week actually was the class about this, and we can choose pure desire, and pure desire we can choose to try to love selflessly or selfishly, and then everything else, our choice is very little. Our choice. If we're impure, how can we see which guru is pure? We can't, right? Everything, our power is very limited. If we desire something material, I desire a yacht right now. Not the money, no yacht, right? Or there's so many. This is another tangent, but basically, our only power is our desire, and if our desires are sincere, then everything happens beautifully from there. Any questions? Any thoughts? Something? Or just scratching your head?
Scratching my head and also trying to remember what my question was. So if I remember, I'll let you know.
Okay.
I remember sometimes people are complaining that a guru shouldn't charge
Yeah.
for spiritual growth.
Yeah.
Not that I know what the real answer should be, because I feel like at the end he or she has to make his living as well.
Yeah.
So what about
charging for spiritual life? If someone is surrendered, which is like the first part of spiritual life, then they accept that Lord is their only maintainer. They know that my control of the nature of this material world is limited. So if they're actually a guru, actually advanced, they know that everything's arranged by God, and they're not so preoccupied and fearful and ambitious to try to make money. So their motivation for teaching is not their selfish interest, their selfish need of survival or selfish need of anything like that. And if that's their concern, then that's a part of them that's still conditioned. That's that's not pure. So I know I didn't directly answer it. We're getting, but do you want to?
No.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, a guru, that's not their motivation. That's not their desire, right? in the culture, there's also the understanding that energy, everything is an energy exchange. So if I move this over here, for the camera, if I move this,
Yes,
we remember you
only
together.
receive it's stuck energy.
Step energy. If this moves, the air from here has to move somewhere else. Everything is in a natural flow of like that. So there's the idea of Guru Dakshina, which means if I learn something, then I give some energy in exchange, which is often money, or like in Bengal, I used to teach in the villages, and these old grandmothers come and they're keeping their sari wrapped like this, these coins. It's like half of it is worth like a third of a peso or something like that, or they'll take like a guava or just like a tiny little something to get, or they have these batasha, which are these little like sugar candy like this big. I'll give you like a piece of candy or something, all right? And the idea is that if I'm receiving, then I want to give something in reciprocation, and that kind of completes the energetic loop. And so that's a part of the culture. Traditionally, in the culture, everyone knows this. So if I'm inspired, then they give donation, and if I'm not inspired, I don't give donation. But then you don't get the full benefit of the wisdom, because that energetic exchange doesn't happen, and it's according to one's inspiration, desire, and capacity. That's the culture. So guru never charging, but disciples always giving as part of. That's generally the way that it is.
So what's about those bigger ashrams and those big retreat centers? Obviously, they are kind of well managed, and they need financing.
Yeah. So I'm working on building an ashram here and a retreat center, and we're getting investors, and we're seeing the cost structures of it, and what's the return on investment, like all of that. And I also, like, I wrote my book, right? And this is sold in the stores, and there's a charge to do it, and it's sold. And the way that a few things that I see. One is when you're in Western culture, people don't always know that there needs to be an energy exchange. The culture is, what's the price? How much does it cost? And you like label the price, right? So it's like, okay, if someone can pay for a Coca-Cola, they can pay for enlightenment, right? They can give something. So it's like culturally translating, saying, okay, this is the cost of this, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's like a cultural translation of the same principle. Also, we want purity, but we can't take purity. Like, I remember I was on the train in India with one of my mentors, one of my teachers. Said if sadhus, which was like spiritual teachers, acted like real sadhus, said none of you would be here. If I was really just in my element, you wouldn't be here. And I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, I love you. What do you mean I won't be here? And I've dedicated my life, right? And he's like, no, you're here because I'm like, how are you? Are you okay? And I'm giving some love and affection that to satisfy your mind. But this is still material, right? If I was really in transcendence, I would just be deep in meditation. I wouldn't talk about anything material. There'd be no chit chat. There'd be no material connection. It would all just be, wouldn't even need words. It would just be like telepathic, like ultra wisdom. But you're not there. So it gets mixed with a social environment, like most religions are a social gathering or get together. And there's always mixed. I call it like sandwich. The main part of the sandwich is the cheese or the tofu if you're vegan or whatever, right? Like the essential, like that's the main part. But we can't really just eat that, so we put bread on the side to be able to digest it and make it a holistic thing. So spiritual life is always made that way. Like right now, what are we doing, right? We're talking about Veda, and there's some spiritual wisdom in this conversation that we're having, and we're growing. But there's also intentionality. We have these nice mats that are beautiful. We're choosing to do it here instead of in the middle of mosquito land, right? Being the fact that we're by the beach, it's nice. The fact that it's social and Tulum, and it's beautiful. There's all these other things which are not spiritual. They're things of this world that create the whole package. When I'm speaking, I try to make it interesting. I try to make it understandable, logical, which is still all material intellect or material. There's a sandwich. There's the bread that's giving us the essence. So, and when we do the kirtan music, for example, we have the beat to be kind of interesting. We have it be musical. There's always a packaging, right? And so I say, well, if the packaging costs something to make, and people like the packaging, then they can pay for the packaging, but the spiritual wisdom is free.
Yeah.
Right?
I love that, yeah.
The spiritual wisdom is free, but you can pay for the packaging. So like with my book, when I sell my book,
Yeah.
it's like, well, you paid for the printing and you paid for it to the designer to do the falling leaves or whatever, and you paid for the time, but the actual knowledge it is free, right? But if there's a guru that says, like, you ask this questions sincerely, if you ask a question not sincerely, then they can not teach, right? But if you actually sincerely ask a question, any real teacher will have to give that wisdom, and if they don't, then there's something wrong with them.
Yeah.
You know, that's they have to. There's so yes, always free, but there's other things that sometimes it's not so bad to
I mean,
charge.
I've seen not too many in person, but she's looking for me, right?
She's hanging off of
Yeah.
yours.
I don't know. Today
There's a spider.
Yeah.
Somehow she's trying to be friends with me. That's okay. So, for example, those Vipassana centers, they are typically free of charge. And I felt it was still a big setup.
Yeah.
And it was working just fine. I didn't feel like that the service, if I want to call it as such, meaning like
Yeah.
where to sleep and who was bringing me to the class and so on. There was a lot of service provided.
Yeah.
And now if I look at those more fancier retreats, they charge really a lot.
Yeah.
And I feel, okay, I understand that. Clearly you get a bed with linens and there's a shower with soap and everything that needs
Yeah.
to be paid for, and then there's this registration, and then there's the website. I totally understand that. But I hear of people then saying sometimes, well, that only works for the people who have a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I never know what to say to that, because sometimes I feel tempted to say, well, then you must do the Vipassana. It's available to do also for free.
Yeah.
What is your comment on that?
Well, I don't know them and how they manage their things, so I'm not commenting on that, but I can
Yeah.
comment on principle. I know with my guru, right, he would do tours in India and it's always the classes completely open, free. Like, for example, doing the programs here in Ikao, they're like, in other places, they're like, oh, you want to charge people to come in for the class. I was like, I can't do that. I can't charge people, right? People give a donation. Last week, someone gave a nice $100 donation, right? But it's like, if they give a donation, then I can give that towards the place, but I don't want to set up the place where in order to be able to hear, you have to pay, right? So my guru was like that, but if they had a dharmashana, basically like a hotel in the temple, and if you wanted to rent one of the rooms, then you rent one of the rooms and you rent that like a room, but the classes are always open and free. What I'm doing here in Tulum, because I want to build a nice retreat center here, is we're making a luxury hotel with the Ayurvedic massages, and that's all for sale. And how we're budgeting it is, there's people that are investing in the hotel business, that's there, but with part of the budget is we also create a temple, and then that temple is open and free, where we're doing classes for free for everyone, and that's kind of how I'm doing it. So both. So you get the people who pay to pay for the other guys for free, right?
What's about, unless somebody else wants to ask another question?
Go.
I have a comment about that, and sometimes if someone asks me something like that, because I'm a yoga teacher, and yeah, I do a lot of meditation and practice like that, and then this question always comes. And what I think for me is really funny that when these people complain about, but they never complain of buy a drink or buy clothes that are actually making a disaster in our planet, you know. And so it's like, well, the point is, where do you put your energy and your money, if it's good for you or not? And if I put in my money just to have the grace to give a little bit back of what my teacher of my guru is giving to me, it's invaluable.
Right.
What was your other question? Thank you.
The other question that I kept on asking myself, how to do this in a good manner, because sometimes I see when there's the guru or the speaker or the person who, the guru, they sit on a pedestal.
Yeah.
And then I feel sometimes, that's maybe not really cool. But then I feel, well, but if there's so many people, how the heck are we going to look up?
How are you going to see him if he's not up on a high
And then I
seat?
was already trying to figure out if it would be me, how maybe everyone else should sit up and he should sit down, if that would work. So I just want to hear comments and ideas. What is actually the right thing to do there?
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar, like in India, there's like this big, huge, fancy seat, right? And it's like this super fancy thing where the guru will often sit and everyone's like there on the floor. And it's relevant to today's class because this seat is called the Vyasasana. There's a special name for it. It's called Vyasasana. And Vyasa was the original guru who was born yesterday. His birthday is yesterday. And it's his seat, right? But the guru sits on the Vyasasana, on the seat of Vyas. Because when he's teaching in that moment, it's not him. His ego, his condition, his own thing, he's trying to put that, if he's not pure, he's trying to put that to side and fully represent and teach that original wisdom. And we respect and accept it as if it's coming from Vyasadeva and it's coming from God. Like that. So all over the world, I've sat in very big fancy seats sometime. And I started teaching when I was like, hey, how's it going? He was the one that was last week, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So I started teaching. My guru sent me teaching the village. I was like a teenager, like 19 or something, right? And then I had like these in Bengal in the villages. They had like a lot of the culture of respect, and they would bring us and they like wash your feet and like respect you and do like this whole worship. And I'm like this kid. I'm like, what the hell? They're like treating me like God and like seriously like worshiping like. And I'm just like, I've got plenty of faults. How do I deal with this? What do I do? And then I was like, well, they don't know me. They've never met me. It's the first time. They're following the culture because I'm wearing the robes and filling that role. They're respecting all the gurus and everything in the line, and they're trusting that I'm surrendered enough that I'm not thinking, yeah, it's me, wash my feet, put me on there, and they're not taking it in my own ego, that I'm offering it to my guru. And my guru's offering to his guru and his guru and his guru up there. So I said, it's my service to accept this. If I tell them no, then they have no opportunity to be able to offer that, to be able to give that, and them giving that is giving their energy for God. So rather than being like, no, don't do this, and making it bad for their spiritual life, I accept them. It's not me, and I give it. There's actually something sannyasis, the monks, like renounce. There's the Vedic culture, is that if you see them, you have to go on the floor and like pay obeisances, right? And there's something called a danda. I didn't bring mine now, but it's like a ceremonial staff that's given as part of the initiation. And there's like God inside of it. One of the reasons for the danda is that when someone pays obeisances, you kind of put it in front of you. And like, okay, they're paying to that, not to me, right? It's like to the cloth, not taking it. So in the East, there's a very big culture of respect of gurus and teachers, of elevation and that. And in a pure sense, there's nothing wrong with it because, like we said, not taking for himself, passing it on. In a real sense, it's also a sandwich, right? Chances are most gurus are a little mixed with their own material conditioning. When I was 19 years old and and having people respect me, it's like I tell you now, like I got plenty of material conditioning and lust and anger and all kinds of stuff, right? But there's a sandwich mix, and if you think of it this way, just like I'll speed up a little bit, but people worship celebrities, people worship Instagram influencers, it's human nature to always look up to someone. So if you're going to look up to someone, why not be it someone who's going to help you spiritually, right? If you're going to do it, I've experienced it myself. I'm like, don't treat me like that, and then people need it. Like, oh, you're so humble. I'm like, or have you seen Monty Python and the Life of Brian?
I heard about it, but
oh, it's hilarious. It's an old English comedy, but it's one guy, Brian, and they thought that he was Jesus, the Messiah. They misread it, and they thought it was Brian instead of Jesus, and then all these people were chasing him as the Messiah, and then he goes, I'm not the Messiah, They say, "Oh, you're so humble. Only the Messiah would say that," right? And then he goes, "Well, then I am the Messiah." They go, "The Messiah!" Right? And then he's running, and then he drops a shoe, and then he drops a gourd, like a thing, and then you have the two shafts of people. They're like, "Follow the shoe, no, follow the gourd," right? And then they start fighting and they kill each other, right? And it's like human nature hasn't changed in thousands of years, right? So people want to what?
That never changed.
It never changes. It's the way it is. So people, whoever their celebrity is, whoever they get starstruck, people do that. So I know there's a lot of problems people have, like, well, if a guru is supposed to be detached, then how is he being treated like God in this situation? And the truth is, the material side, if he's material, his ego may be being stroked a little bit, but if there's sincerity, then there's also humility. It's one of the most important qualities of the guru. Humility means I'm not taking for myself, and I'm giving it up. Like, let's say right now in this class, this is, in a sense, in a function, I'm sitting on technically the Vyasa, so I'm representing Vyas, teaching this wisdom here. So now the camera's on me, it's not on you. I get to choose who speaks, I get to not choose. I'm being the alpha, quote unquote, of this situation. And if there's another guy who's like trying to fight with me for a girl or something, came out, be like, who's he there, right? They'd have the problem, and maybe a part of my material self likes it, but I'm trying to step out of the way to be able to be sincere at the same time. It's inevitable. It's always going to happen. It's always going to happen. And if guru is pure, no problem. If guru is impure, then problem. And but if it's a sandwich that works for you, I'm going to do a cult celebrity around someone, I'm a cult celebrity around this guy, then heck, why not sandwich it, right? Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
And if it doesn't work for you, then find a guru that doesn't have the big fancy seat, right?
Yeah.
Find one that works with you, Any other questions? Or something? No?
No. Well, actually, how do you know if your desire is selfish or selfless?
How do you know?
So, like, if it's giving you something back, it's making you feel...
It's not intellectual. If you try to intellectualize it, it means you don't know. It's like, the example is, there's like a little 4-year-old girl and asks, "When am I going to have a baby?" Right? To the mom, says, "You'll know." Right? When you're giving birth, you'll know, right? It's definitely, you'll be aware. So if we have to intellectualize it, maybe not. Yeah, right? It's not intellectual. But when you're sincere, then you just are, right? And you don't need to know it, because it is. I don't know if that makes sense. I guess what I'm saying is, just try to open your heart and be sincere, and that's enough. And you don't have to judge whether it is or it isn't. You don't have to try to pass that judgment on yourself, because that's the faculty that you're using to judge that is a material faculty of intellect. It's not the spiritual faculty of opening up in selfless service. It's a different language, even. Now, I could probably give you some, like, for the logical mind, some lakshan, which means some symptoms of surrender, or some symptoms of advancement, or some symptoms of a pure guru. And there's these side effect symptoms, which they're good to know, but it's not the essential point, right? It's not the essential point. I know that didn't really answer your question. It might be kind of like hard to get it, but yeah, just be sincere. That's the answer, the real answer.
Thank you.
I think
It's
it's a really answer to
what?
say. I think that it's a really good answer to say that it's not intellectual.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
However, the intellectual sandwich, let's sandwich it, right? The intellectual mind still needs something. They say, Atmendra Prithivancha Thare Bole Kam Krishnendra Prithivancha Dore Prem Nam. Right? Because if knowledge and love are the same thing, different faculties of the same thing, then Atmendriya, when it's to satisfy my own senses, my own taste, smell, sight, intellect, ego, my own identification of my own being, then that's lust and that's selfish interest. And when it's to satisfy the desire of God, something which is not about me, I'm not concerned about whether I'm happy or not. And it's not good marketing. Marketing, we say, if you want to be happy, do spiritual life, right? But it's really, it's like, you shouldn't even want to be happy, just want to love, and happiness is a side effect that comes from that. So when you're like, I just want to do what is right. I just want to do what is pleasing to the divine. And then that's pure love. On a higher stage, you have relationship, then I'm trying to please the senses of God, in a sense, you can say. On a more basic level, dharma, I want to know the truth, sincerely understand the truth, and I want to live a proper life. And then that is the beginning of that desire, same thing. It's about something other than me, something greater power. When it's I'm the greatest, it's all about me, then it's selfish. Is that okay? That's good. Any other questions? Something you had? No? No. Very good. Okay, so we're going to do another kirtan. And she's going to sing. What are you going to sing? It's complicated for people to know. Oh, you can do that? Yeah, why not? No, just sing like another Radhe one. I think we had enough of Guru. Right? No, that's